The death of Antonin Scalia might have inadvertently had some very good ramifications for American unions.
Yes.
Now, you're not supposed to talk about the good things that result from someone dying, but this is simply a fact that one of the greatest legal challenges to the continued future and political impact of American unions very well might have died when he died. And so what we're talking about is the case Fredericks versus California Teachers Association, which anti-union forces had seen as the greatest way to handicap the ability of unions to influence, the work that the unions do, but more especially their ability to lobby and be effective politically by taking away their main source of funding, which is member dues. So understand that unions are required by law to bargain on behalf of every worker in a unionized shop. This is current law, even if those workers opt not to join the union. As such, non-members receive the same higher wages. One study found that workers in unionized shops enjoy a wage premium of nearly 12%, and the benefits enjoyed by their coworkers who belong to the union. And so basically, if you work at a place that is union and non-union, all those people get the increased pay when the union works for them. But not all of those people are members of the union. So for decades now, it's been law that the unions can require that both members and non-members pay dues, because otherwise there's no incentive to be a part of the union. You can simply not be a part of it and still get the wage increases. It's the free rider problem. They wanted to avoid it. So absent something else, this arrangement would create that free rider problem, because individual workers would have little incentive to actually join the union if they knew that they get all the benefits of unionizing, regardless of whether they reimburse the union for its costs. And the point of this is so that eventually unions risk becoming starved for funds and collapsing, causing the workers once represented by a union to lose the benefits of collective bargaining. So if you were able to take away the ability of unions to force non-members to pay the dues, the unions would not continue to function for very long, and they wouldn't have any money to continue to lobby politically as well. And on the Democratic side, unions are nowhere near as powerful as they once were, but they're still an effective force in terms of influencing politicians to do the right thing for actual workers rather than the corporations that they work for. So there's the Fredericks versus California Teachers Association. Now, the Supreme Court had made multiple steps in the direction of an eventual decision abolishing agency fees over the past couple of years, and it was widely believed before the death of Antonin Scalia that Fredericks versus California would be the end of this protection, this requirement that non-members pay the dues. But because he died, a 5-4 decision in favor of Fredericks versus California instead becomes 4-4. It then goes back down to the previous level, and the ability of the unions to continue to get the dues from non-members has continued. And unless a Republican becomes president next and gets to choose a Supreme Court justice, in all likelihood, anyone that either Bernie Sanders or Obama or Hillary would appoint to the court, theoretically, would be on the side of the unions.
You think Merrick Garland is on the side of the unions?
Look, I think that Merrick Garland is...
The fact that it's even a goddamn question.
I don't think it's a huge question. He's nowhere near as liberal as he should be. He still is center-left in my mind. All the analyses that I've seen of his decisions indicate that he's center-left. I honestly don't know exactly where he would be on that. I find it hard to believe that Barack Obama would appoint someone to the Supreme Court who would work against unions. And look, I have some evidence. He has appointed 2 other people to the Supreme Court, and they were on the right side of this. And so that is some indication of where his Supreme Court preferences lie. But in any event, I think that Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders would appoint someone who would help to stave off future cases in the same vein as Fredericks. But while it's good news...
Bernie Sanders will, but I don't know about Hillary Clinton. And you don't know either.
I don't know for sure. I think she's much more likely than Donald Trump, John Kasich, any of them.
Wow, that's sticking your neck out.
It is. I'm making bold predictions. But look, anyway, up until his death, this was going to go 5-4 to cut down those unions. Unions are a significantly smaller share of the total workforce than they were just a couple of decades ago, let alone almost 100 years ago. But this would have been the death of them. They would not have continued to function in the way that they do now if they were not able to get those funds, because people would leave expecting that they'll get the benefits, the union will die, and then no workers would get the benefits, which is already the case in many workplaces around the country.
It sounds so simple. It's like, why should I have to give money to an organization that is going to take my money and use it for politics that I don't agree with?
That does make sense.
That seems to offend my sense of American fairness. Yeah. Right? Why I shouldn't have to give my money to politicians that I don't support. How could you force me to give my money? Now here, is an argument that conservatives always like to use when people want to unionize. Like I remember I was having a discussion with a conservative guy about Disneyland and how they pay their workers horribly and how they were living in poverty and having to use government services instead of using the pay they get from Disneyland. And he said, hey, if they don't like their jobs, it's America, it's free, they can go get another job. Why don't they just go get another job? That's what I'm going to say to those people who don't want to pay their union dues when they work at a place that has a union. You don't have to work at a place that has a union. Go work somewhere else. Plenty of places that don't have unions. My wife is a teacher, and that's what she always says to those asswipe teachers who don't support their own union. But they every time there's a raise, they take the money that the union got them. They don't go on principle, I'm turning down this raise. I'm going to stick with the private schools in my district, what they're getting paid, because private schools get paid less than public schools. They get worse benefits. They don't have unions, right? They're at the mercy of an administrator, okay? And that's not good for kids, okay? So what my wife tells teachers who don't support the union is like, oh, really? Why don't you go try out your theory? There's plenty of private schools all over the city, all over the goddamn state. Why don't you go test your theory that good teachers should be rewarded for being a better teacher, that all teachers shouldn't be paid the same? Why don't you go test? They don't do it. You know why? Because they have a better life teaching at a place that has a union. And when a teacher is happier and feels more secure, don't you think that filters down to the students to have a teacher who doesn't worry about being fired at the drop of a hat? Because that's when real learning happens, by the way, when everyone's afraid of being fired. So that's what I say to those people who, if you don't want to pay union dues, go get a job somewhere else that doesn't have a goddamn union. You're such a valuable employee. I'm sure a lot of places are going to be beating on the door to hire you as a non-union employee then, right? You're such a good employee. So go leave that union place alone and quit trying to undermine working people. That's all non-union people do. When you work at a place that's union and you're non-union and you don't support them, you're a scab. That makes you a parasite because now you are getting the benefits of other people's labor. Other people are sticking their neck out, they're organizing, they're rallying people, and they're fighting for a living wage. You're not doing that, but when they get that living wage, you take that money, which makes you a parasite, makes you a scab. That's why they call you a scab, which is what you are. If you're a non-union person working at a union shop, you're undermining those people, and you're a scab and a parasite. So go test out your theory. Most places in the world are non-union right now. Why don't you get one of those jobs? But you're not gonna.
Oh, and this was the good news story. You get really pissed when you get good news.
I get pissed off at people who don't support unions.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and look, again, when you just hear, well, I'm not in it, why do I have to pay? You can sort of understand why people would be pissed off, but thankfully they've already been reimbursed by the benefits and the higher pay. So I guess it equals out in the end.